in the men's race. Zersne Tadesse of Eritrea, the world record holder at the half marathon, but he's never broken 2:10, has never been able to master the marathon, despite this being his 5th attempt. The previous 4 have not really produced what was expected of the 36-year-old. Wilson Kipchoge, well, he is one of the great legends of the marathon distance. Himself 36 years old, this is his 4th appearance in Berlin. He won here in 2013 and a world record, was second 3 years later. Failed to finish last year in the cold and the rain. Behind the win of this man, Eliud Kipchoge, the defending champion, going for his 3rd Berlin win. He won here in 2015 in 2:04. He's won 9 of his 10 marathons. He won last year in 2:03.32 in the pouring rain. He's the reigning Olympic champion, the greatest marathon runner in history, without any doubt. He just misses that one great statistic, a world record beside his name. Will today be the day for Eliud Kipchoge, the 33-year-old Kenyan, who has stated that he plans to go out in 61 minutes exactly for the halfway point. That, of course, would put him on schedule for a huge new world record. That mark, remember, 2:02.57, belongs to Dennis Kimeto of Kenya, set here 4 years ago. It's a target which many feel is well within the ability of Kipchoge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
So they're on their way then, the 45th edition of the BMW Berlin Marathon. Glorious blue skies above the German capital, hardly a breath of wind as they get underway at 9:15 a.m. local time. The blue and white of the sponsors is very much to the fore throughout the city and around the course. And the 3 waves of mass participants will pour through that line over the next few minutes as the elite will tear around the course at world record tempo for the first few kilometers. How many of them will survive through to 10 kilometers and then halfway 21.1 kilometers, Chris?
Yeah, and what a journey this race has had. First run in 1974 on the 13th of October. That year, just a mere 286 starters, and now we're approaching 40,000, expecting to get 40,000 finishers across the line today. The Berlin Marathon really has developed outstandingly well. One of the 6 World Marathon major events, of course, and there we are. 40,000. If you add in the hand bikers and the wheelchairs, and the mini marathon will bring you up to date on events yesterday as well. We're touching 50,000 people taking part over the whole weekend.
Well, there are a host of pacemakers out there, of course, in those blue and white striped vests to indicate their status. We're looking for kilometre splits for Kipchoge at the front of this men's field of around 2:54 per kilometre. That would take him through halfway in 61 minutes. They pass the Sieger Säule, of course, and already well separated from the rest of the field is that lead pack. Don't forget that in an unofficial marathon in Italy back in 2017, Kipchoge ran 2 hours and 25 seconds. He was trying desperately to break the 2-hour barrier. He came incredibly close, but it was under non-official or unofficial conditions. He had pacemakers who were rotating and a vehicle which was just a few yards in front of him, providing a degree of cover. And he was having his drinks passed to him and so on. But that, I think, has given him the belief, Chris, that he can run certainly some way below the 2:02.57 world record of Kimeto from 4 years ago. In effect, he feels probably that he's got a significant cushion there.
Yes, the only big question mark I think that a few people have mentioned is how much did that Monza experience really take out of him? That's the unknown question. 33 years old now.
1 kilometre in 2:43, so much, much quicker than the tempo required. That is viciously fast. There are 10 men in the field who have broken the 2-hour 10 barrier, 2 hours 10-minute barrier. That is considered perhaps the benchmark of world-class marathon running these days, even though the likes of Eliud Kipchoge are looking to run here today under 2 hours 3 minutes. He will finish 2 kilometres and more ahead of athletes who may break 2:10 today by just a few seconds.
Well, They continue to pour down the main avenue here, slicing through the Tiergarten on a beautiful, beautiful late summer, early autumn day. Conditions, as Tim was saying, absolutely perfect. And we have our fingers and toes crossed that we may see conditions for a world record, possibly even two. Let's not forget the women also are going out very bullishly, and Paula Radcliffe's record, 2:15.25, remember, which has stood for 15 years now, way back in 2003. That is potentially up for grabs today. Tirunesh Barber talking very bullishly in her press conference. If the conditions were right, she said, and I feel good, then I think we'll go for it.
The crowd streaming either side of the Siegersäule there. Wonderful, wonderful sight. It is a majestic city, is Berlin. Wonderful mix of old and new. Lots and lots of green space. Glorious city for cyclists and visitors who want to use any mode of transport. Ideal for those who love to run through greenery and the silence of a forested area. Many of these athletes, of course, will just be looking to get round. Many will have their own ambitions, their own goals. But that opening kilometre from the elite athletes, who are now at 1.7 kilometres, by the way, 2:43 equates to 1 hour 57 pace. Lightning quick, insanely fast. They'll never keep that up, of course. Can Kipchoge today, or anybody else, get below the current world record of Kimetto from 4 years ago? And if so, can they get under it by some margin? There was even discussion at a function we attended last night, Chris, wasn't there, of Kipchoge here looking to break the world record by a big chunk and putting it out of sight for many a year, perhaps breaking it by 30, 40 seconds or more. Yeah, he's in that sort of mood. And many people feel that actually Eliud Kipchoge has been in world record form for the last 2 or 3 years. Remember, we've already mentioned the weather really thwarted him last year here in Berlin. And 2 years before that, there was the incident of the flapping insole. Many people remember that he ran most of the race with one of his insoles flapping around behind him. Still ran an extraordinary time. So many people feel that Berlin 2018, all the stars are aligning for Kipchoge to finally get that world record. And, well, based on his opening couple of kilometres, he is in a mean mood here. He runs his own race, single-minded, such a humble guy. Multi-millionaire, of course, but still lives a very modest lifestyle up in the Rift Valley. Utterly devoted to training and his cause. And as you heard at the top of the programme, regards himself as his main competitor. Well, that second kilometre was a 2:58, much more sensible. I wouldn't be surprised if Kipchoge chatted away to these three pacemakers. Josfat Boit to the left of Pecha Kitwara, in the middle Sami Kitwara and Bernard Kipkemoy to the right there. Those are the three designated to help him move along at 61-minute tempo for halfway. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a word with them and say, hey boys, slow down, that 2:43 just a little bit too quick. The second kilometre at 2:58, getting them to 2 kilometres in 5:41. That's still sub 2 hour tempo, but a significant easing back there to a more sensible speed. And we will try and keep track of the tempo throughout the race to keep you nailed on as to the chances of this world record happening this morning in Berlin. Well, they're the leading women, as you can see. Tirunesh Barber, left of screen, on the right of your picture there in the green top, with that trademark high arm carriage. Rita Aga as well. There we are. Rita Aga, the other Ethiopian, the youngest in the field, really, of the elite women. Rita Aga making her third appearance in Berlin. She was second here last year. And there is the split story, if you like, of Paula Radcliffe's record back in 2003 in London. And she not only finished in 2:15.25, she had a sizable negative split on that day. And just for those of you not familiar with the terminology, that means she ran the second half of the race more quickly than the first. She went out in 68.02. Tirunesh Barber has asked for 68 today, and she's got her own pacemaker there, Abdi Ali. She's been training with him in Ethiopia around Addis. Almost her private pacemaker there. There is Tola as well, another one of the Ethiopians. Yes, just to clarify those splits for you, Chris, they were average pace for Paula Radcliffe. They showed 67.42 for her halfway split in London, because she ran a much quicker second half, having reached halfway in 68.02. Well, here is that leading quartet. They go through 3 kilometers there with a 2:53 third kilometer. And remember, we're looking for around 2:54, so they're just beginning to zoom in on the required tempo. This trio of pacemakers, and they're the second group to ride a picture. And Wilson Kipsang is there, third to right in that second group. Wilson Kipsang said he wants to go out to halfway in 61.30. Now, the issue is that over 13 miles of running, 21 kilometers, a 30-second difference is almost nothing. It is literally a couple of seconds per kilometer. So it's very, very tough for his group of pacemakers, that second group there, to stay disciplined and stick to the schedule and just lose a very little ground each kilometer from this leading quartet.
Well, there you can see, charting against the world record pace of Kimetto. They're about 10 seconds inside world record pace as they enter the 4th kilometer.
Eliud Kipchoge there in the all-white with the arm sleeves, who had issues with his footwear here in Berlin. As Chris mentioned, back in 2015, he won, of course, despite being in some pain, and then he won last year in heavy rain. So his 2 previous victories have both had disadvantages for the great man. He is the Olympic champion. He won in Rio at a canter, frankly, in hot, humid conditions in 2 hours and 8 minutes. That was slow by his standards.
Second wave of mass runners getting underway there, right of picture. Like most of the big city marathons, they get them underway in different waves to make sure that the course itself is not too congested. And there's a lot of people to get over that start line. A lot of patience required, but fortunately conditions absolutely perfect. Nobody's getting cold on the start line in conditions like this here in Berlin today. A picture perfect day. Sunshine just glinting off the trees there, you can see, as they start their way 42.195 kilometers ahead. A lot of running to go.
Well, they're the leading group to the right of picture. Centre of picture is that second group with the pacemakers Noah Keegan, Richard Mengic and Simon Cheprot moving at 61.30 tempo for Wilson Kipsang, who knows this course so well. And look at the furrowed brow of Eliud Kipchoge in that white vest up ahead. But the discipline that's got to be stuck to by this second group is quite a tough one, because they've been running for 11.5 minutes, 2:54 that 4th kilometer after a 2:53, so beginning to hit that nice, steady, metronomic tempo after a 2:53 third kilometer. It's very tough for that second group to maintain the correct tempo and to just allow that gap to grow by a few meters each kilometer. And indeed, for Wilson Kipsang, it must go against all his instincts, Chris. Every sinew in his body, every muscle in his body must be saying, go with Eliud Kipchoge. That white vest, some 40 meters or so ahead now. It must be frustrating to have to watch it and let it go.
But he's a consistent runner. There we're just seeing confirmation of Eliud Kipchoge's dominance, really. 9 out of 10 marathons have been victorious for him. As Tim was saying at the top of the programme, no doubt at all now, he is the best ever male marathon runner of all time, regardless of what happens today. Olympic champion, and the only thing missing from his CV, that precious world record. Will this be his day in Berlin?
Of course, when you're talking about world record tempo, and you're a pacemaker who wants to get to halfway and perhaps beyond halfway to 25 kilometers or even to 30 kilometers, you've got to be a deeply intense world-class runner in your own right. And Sami Kutwara there to left of picture is the personal pacemaker for Eliud Kipchoge. There you can see that quartet. Now, what is the gap now? As we get this wonderful aerial shot in the glorious sunshine of this Sunday morning. mid-September morning. It's what, about 60 meters, 50 meters, something like that. That's all that's been built up in 13.5 minutes of running.
So approaching the first major split, 5K will bring you that, and we'll be charting Kipchoge's progress against world record pace. Kipchoge went through in 14:41.
Well, the athletes getting underway at 9:15 in the morning. The first of 3 waves from this almost 40,000 strong lineup. 44,389 entries accepted. Around 40,000 expected to toe the line. There is always a significant proportion of athletes whose training goes wrong and they enter a race, pay their entry fee, don't make it to the start line. But women and men starting simultaneously, each with quite specific goals, the elite athletes. 5K coming up then in this elite men's race. And Eliud Kipchoge sticking close on the heels, 5 kilometers there in around 14:24.
Well, that's well inside world record pace. Dennis Kipchoge in 2014 went through in 14:41. So 17 seconds inside.
Yes, 14:24 for Eliud Kipchoge and the rest of them. And that equates to, well, something down there around 2:01 tempo, about 2:01:15 tempo. So they've now hit the correct average speed, and there can be no letting up if he wants to get down there around 2:02, which is the sort of mark that was being discussed last night.
Extraordinary, extraordinary. Sami Khedira, worth mentioning, hugely experienced pacemaker, did a really good job last year in difficult conditions. Meanwhile, the women, there is Tirunesh Dibaba, centre of picture, looking very comfortable indeed. And Tim will have learnt, I'm sure, from her experience in London early this year when she went off crazily quickly, 31:45 for the first 10 kilometres, and paid for it big time later in the race, had to drop out eventually. She will have learnt from that a much more measured approach. And there is her compatriot Ruti Aga, left of picture. Gladys Chirona, the defending champion there, the winner last year in the orange top. And they're all in there. Tola, the Ethiopian too.
Yeah, very interesting athlete, Ruti Aga. Chris, you mentioned she's the young contender here, but it is her 7th marathon. She's got plenty of experience, and as you mentioned, 3rd here 2 years ago, 2nd last year. If she maintains that sequence, it would create a very significant upset despite her personal best of 2:20 on paper. Dibaba almost 3 minutes quicker.
Women then approaching 5 kilometres, 16:27 they've gone through the first 5 kilometres. That's just outside course record pace, Mizuki Noguchi from 2005, but it's significantly down on Paula Radcliffe's world record. And that's a mixed race world record, let's remind people, from 2003.
Well, if that figure is correct, Chris, 16:27, it equates to around 2:19 exactly, that sort of tempo. So it would be pretty much smack on that course record.
Yeah, 24 seconds outside course record pace, world record pace at 5 kilometres.
Although, of course, one has to remember that Paula Radcliffe in London back in 2003 enjoyed that huge downhill in the first 3 miles from Blackheath down towards the levels of the River Thames, where the remainder of the course remains primarily flat in the British capital, the English capital, I should say.
Yeah, Berlin, by contrast, pancake flat, really. Very, very little to talk about in terms of incline or decline, and that's what makes Berlin so quick. So many world records, of course, broken on this course. 10 in all, 7 in the men's race, 3 in the women's. And the last 6 men's world records have all been broken here on this very course. That's why it's the USP, isn't it, Tim, of the Berlin Marathon. That's why people want to come and race in the German capital, because it is super fast.
No, exactly right. And most years, I would say 5 years out of 6, conditions are absolutely glorious. It's rare to have conditions that are not very good in Berlin. I've been here once or twice in the last decade, and it's been a little bit colder than some of the athletes might like, but actually that in itself is not a bad thing, as we get this glorious shot of the center of the German capital, the Reichstag, of course, one of the great tourist attractions, the German parliament buildings.
Yeah, with the famous cupola designed by Norman Foster, a real tourist attraction. You can walk up the spiral staircase and get a wonderful view over Berlin. And if you're up there today, well, what a sight you've got. You've got the quickest men and women on the planet in the marathon doing their stuff right down in front of you.
Sami Kitwara, that pacemaker, right in the center of those three in the striped vests. Was a bronze medalist in the World Half Marathon Championships back in 2010. He's very much a world-class athlete in his own right. 31 years old now, very experienced. He's actually the 10th fastest athlete in history at the half marathon. He's run 58.48, and anything under 60 minutes for a half marathon is mighty quick. There's that gap, though, from the chasing group, the second group, to the lead group, and it's now, what, probably about 14 seconds, something like that, at 5K. The gap was significantly less. It was 9 seconds, but it is growing all the time. And that is all part of the plan for Wilson Kipsang, who I guess, Chris, has to believe, there he is in that vest, that non-striped vest, sort of surrounded by the pacemakers there. Wilson Kipsang has got to believe that Eliud Kipchoge can come back. He will still want to win this race, just he plans to get to the victory with a different journey. Yeah,
he's got to hope that Eliud Kipchoge will blow up. It's never really happened before. Having said that, there are one or two people who think they've spotted just the smallest glimpses of vulnerability in Eliud Kipchoge in his last two races. He's won them both. He's only lost one marathon ever in his life. That was to Wilson Kipsang on this very course. But just one or two suggestions that perhaps that experience in Monza, the sub-2 experiment, took really rather too much out of Eliud Kipchoge.
Well, the leading men at just after 7 kilometers now, 20 minutes on the clock. Eliud Kipchoge looking very relaxed there, just cruising along in the wake of this trio. His planned halfway time is 61 minutes exactly. And that is what he did in London back in April. But in London last April, it was a very warm day, around 20 degrees centigrade, around 68, 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Far from ideal for very quick marathon running. And many people feel that Kipchoge wanted 61 minutes in London in those warm conditions because he felt he would be the best equipped to survive a tempo that was actually too fast for the conditions. Now, here we go. You can see 5 kilometers, 14:24, 17:18 at 6 kilometers, and 20:13 at 7 kilometers. The world record tempo is still some way behind this quartet. So if you can imagine a little virtual group running along at world record pace, it would be some 10 seconds or so behind Eliud Kipchoge, which would suggest that that second group are almost bang on top of the virtual world record pace. He's building up a cushion here, Eliud Kipchoge, which either will enable him, Chris, to break the world record by big margin today, or to get just under the world record, because he's building up a cushion, or indeed, perhaps blow up. That would be the nightmare scenario for the Kenyans.
We shall keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, all shapes and sizes and colours, of course, taking part in this Berlin Marathon 2018. Lots of people running for worthy causes and charity. Millions and millions of euros and dollars being raised for charitable causes. There is the Schloss Laufer, we could call him, I suppose, running as a castle. We've got some Mexicans. Remember, over 130 different nationalities taking part in this Berlin Marathon in 2018. It really is an international festival of running.
What a contrast. These men at almost 8 kilometers, ploughing along, going through the 5-mile point, if you prefer the miles, while others have yet to cross the start line. Here we come, 8 kilometers now, a 2:55 there. They're beginning to hit a lovely rhythm. The last 4 kilometers have been 2:54, 2:54, 2:55, 2:55. Just metronomic stuff from this group of pacemakers. They're doing a wonderful job, it has to be said. Eliud Kipchoge will be aware of that. There will be so many indicators in his mind, in his legs, telling him that they're maintaining a nice steady tempo. The ground is very flat, the surface is generally good. He will know he's getting into a lovely groove, the rhythm that he can stick to.
And amusingly was talking in the press conference about not the world record, wasn't he, but talking about I'll do my best to break my personal best. And of course, as you saw at the top of the program, we're talking a mere 8 seconds, the difference. It's a subtle thing. It's perhaps a mark of his sense of humor. No, I'm not going for the world record, I'm going for a personal best.
Well, plenty of corners to be negotiated, but they are generally comfortable corners that you can lean into. The road surface is good, it's not slippery, it's not wet. That is something that has travelled the likes of Haile Gebrselassie, for example, in years gone by, where he felt he was slipping on the road surface in London some 10 or 12 years ago.
Well, yesterday it was all about the inline skaters, over 5,000 of them taking to the start line across the men's and women's event, starting out 4 minutes apart, the women first and then the men. And well, absolutely outstanding entertainment. Berlin does this better than any other marathon in the world. It really is the highlight of the Saturday. And there we can see the men eating up and overtaking the women, with Bart Swings very much dominant in this men's field over the last 5 years. There he is, the Belgian, looking for a 6th consecutive victory. 3 skaters, lights out over the finish line, and once again it was Bart Swings coming home. There he is, number 6, 6 wins out of 6 in a time of 57.58, with Ewan Fernandez and Norlan Bediev, the 2 Frenchmen, coming 2nd and 3rd. In the women's race, this was about 10 kilometers from the finish. A pretty poor crash which involved one of the top 3 women, and in the end again it was a sprint finish for the line, and Katharina Rumpus from Germany just getting over on the line, and after 3 second places, finally at the 8th attempt, Katharina Rumpus from Germany got the winning position. So they're the inline skaters from Saturday.
9 kilometers then on the clock, another 2:55. They are hitting that zone absolutely to perfection. 2:55, 2:55, 2:55. The last 3 kilometers. By the way, that 8 kilometer split, 23:08, represents 2 hours, 2 minutes and 1 second finishing time. So he has built up a very solid cushion now, Eliud Kipchoge. He can afford to slip by a second or 2 per kilometre and still break Kimeto's 4-year-old world record. But he won't want to do that. As stated already, there is an indication that he wants to break this world record by a solid margin, as we see almost an Icelandic clap there. That rhythmic clapping that became so iconic at the FIFA World Cup last year.
Yeah, wonderful scenes. This is the 3rd wave getting ready to get underway. Watches poised. They're like coiled springs, aren't they? Getting ready to be unleashed onto the streets of Berlin.
Was it the European Championships?
It was the European Championships, wasn't it, in 2016? Yes. That's right, the Icelandic clap. It really works. It's a universal thing. It's so simple, but it gets everybody in the mood.
Well, Eliud Kipchoge there, taking on a drink. We were told last night there were extra drinks put out on the course for Kipchoge. That, I think, is just an indication that they were more water stops for him that would be passed to him, because, of course, IAAF rules dictate that there should be a personal drinks for the elite athletes at only every 5 kilometre points. 10 kilometres coming up, though. This is a significant split. You can see there, they're at the northernmost point of the course. So you can see the men and women there or the lead group and the chasing group, I think, separated by some 54 meters. Here we go, approaching 10 kilometers. It's going to be supremely quick. Now, if they wanted to be on world record tempo, well, Dennis Kimetto passed through 10 kilometers in his world record 4 years, going 29:23. You can see quite clearly with, what, about 100 meters to go, that they're going to be way, way inside that, probably some 20 seconds or more inside Kimetto's split for the first 10K. But Kimetto did run fiercely quick in the latter stages in 2014.
Yes, he did. Between 30 and 35, he put in a blistering 14:10. Now,
well, 2:58 there. There's been a slight slowing, but 29:01. So he's 22 seconds up on Kimetto's world record tempo 4 years ago. Kipchoge 11 seconds down. That gap has not grown as much as might have been expected. Kipchoge still well within world record tempo as well in that second group. But 11 seconds down after 10K would suggest, of course, if you double that and add a bit, that they'll be about 24, 25 seconds down at halfway, and they wanted to be about 30 seconds down. So they're very close to being spot on, that second group.
yeah, those timings on the screens, those are average timings, not the actuals. The actuals, as we've been giving, are 29:23. But let's not forget that blistering late surge from Dennis Kimetto of 14:10 in the latter stages took him to the world record. Well, here are the leading women. Tirunesh Dibaba as well, approaching 10 kilometers as well, looking very, very comfortable indeed. Multiple Olympic and world champion, of course, on the track, and has taken to the marathon very, very nicely indeed. Already the third fastest of all time. And Tirunesh Dibaba, well, from that famous family, Genzebi, of course, her younger sister, world champion, 1,500 meters. Hails from the same part of Ethiopia as the likes of Kenenisa Bekele, and the same province as the great Haile Gebrselassie, of course, who set 2 world records of his own on this course all those years ago. So Tirunesh Dibaba in that leading group, approaching 10 kilometers.
How different the conditions, though, that she's enjoying, having in London last April gone out at close to world record tempo, and having had to drop out and admit that she'd misjudged things at around 30 kilometers. There you can see those women's average splits for the course record.
Yeah, that course record has stood for 13 years. Japanese Noguchi, 2:19:12, and she went through her first 10 kilometers for that course record in 32:53. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think we're way, way down on Paula Radcliffe's world record pace. Tirunesh Dibaba, much more controlled, much more even tempo in this opening 10 kilometers. She's obviously learnt her lesson from that experience in London early this year.
But this is a better judged, much better judged effort, isn't it, Chris? Average pace for the women's course record would be 32:59, and you can see that she's still got a minute to go yet before she gets to that point. So Tirunesh Dibaba here going considerably quicker than the course record, slower than the world record that she has been talked about substantially over the last couple of days. But I think this is a nicely judged effort from Tirunesh Dibaba, who might yet be heading for a personal best, if not a world record.
So approaching 10 kilometers, Tirunesh Dibaba, there we are, third fastest woman ever, that 2:17:56 set in London in 2017, so last year. And she really has adapted very, very quickly indeed. Quite simply for many people, the greatest ever female long-distance runner, track and road combined. So here we are, 10 kilometers then. She's gone through, and there is confirmation, 32:44, and that is inside the actual course record time of Mizuki Noguchi from 2005. So she's inside course record pace, but quite considerably outside Paula Radcliffe's world record.
Yes, if she maintains that tempo, she will come home in 2 hours, 18 minutes and 10 seconds, Dibaba. So Not quite a personal best for her, but a very substantial improvement upon the women's course record, as we see this quartet still now out in the glare of the sun, but the temperatures are kind. It's was around 12 degrees centigrade at the start. Now maybe 13. It'll climb very gradually. It's not even 10 to 10 in the morning yet here in Berlin. The furrowed brow of Eliud Kipchoge indicates deep concentration from him, even though on camera and as a man to talk to, he's very, very calm and relaxed. He has a almost zen-like calmness to his personality, which is so charismatic. He's a real leader of their training group under the tutelage of Patrick Sang. Jeffrey Camworall, twice a world half marathon champion, is another member of that group, twice a world cross-country champion, Camworall, and yet he regards Kipchoge here almost as his mentor. Such is the legendary status of Kipchoge.
And just looking at some of the training logs, Tim, for Eliud Kipchoge, 130 miles average a week, including one of his favorite runs, 20 miles at 5-minute miling, and all of that at 2,600 meters. That's the sort of example of the brutal regime that he puts himself through to be in the best possible shape when he comes down from altitude to sea level here in Berlin. Looking very, very comfortable indeed. At the moment, he's got his business face on, but watch out for a rather puzzling smile that breaks out onto his face in the latter stages when it's really hurting and the lactic starts kicking in. Counterintuitively, he breaks into a smile as we pass through 12 kilometers. There's the Straßburger Platz.
Well, another 2:55, that 12th kilometer. They slipped a little bit in the kilometer leading up to 10K. That was a 2:58, but they're back in the groove now. And 2:55 would bring them home if they were to maintain that tempo exactly in 2:03.04. But he has built up a cushion with that quick pace in the first 4 or 5 kilometers. Remember, at 10 kilometers, 29:01. That gave him a likely finishing time of 2:02.20, 2:02.25, there or thereabouts. So he would, going by the 10-kilometer split, break the world record by about 30 seconds. So many more chapters yet to unfold. Of course, traditionally, many exponents of the marathon saying the real racing begins at 20 miles or at around 32 kilometers with about 10K to go. Some even say that's halfway, 32 kilometers.
Well, when I was training for my marathons, people said, yeah, when you get to 20 miles, it's halfway. So don't underestimate those final 6 miles or 10 kilometers or so. Just wonder, Tim, well, we've got a moment to concentrate on Eliud Kipchoge. He's 33 years old now. We were talking last night at that function about how many more marathons perhaps Eliud Kipchoge has got left in him.
Well, that's a very good question, because most people recognize that there's a finite number of strong marathons within the legs and the heart of any human being. But, you know, Wilson Kipsang, well, this is his 21st marathon start. He's still going incredibly strong. He was second in Berlin 2 years ago at the age of 34. And at 36, he's still looking good. Now, there's the average pace through 10 kilometers, 2:57, at 11 kilometers, 2:54, at 12 kilometers, 2:55. So it's very, very slight variations. You could almost put that down to the slight lumps and bumps on the course where they have to cross the canals and the river in 1 or 2 places, the slight rises and undulations.
It's metronomic, though, isn't it? Brilliant pacemaking. You have to take your hats off to the trio there with Sami Kitwara in the middle. They do a brilliant, brilliant job. And when you look, you just mentioned Kipsang, 21st marathon today. It's worth pointing out, Tim, that he's run exactly twice the number of marathons as Eliud Kipchoge.
No, that's right. And there's a lot of miles, a lot of hard running in those legs of Wilson Kipsang. He won Frankfurt in 2010 and 2011. He won London in 2012. He won Berlin with that world record 5 years ago in 2013. He won London in 2014. He won New York in 2014. That was when he was at his peak. Second in London in 2015. Second in Berlin 2 years ago to Kipchoge. So he's got many, many hard races in his legs. Eliud Kipchoge, the defending champion, is only done half that journey, as you point out quite rightly. And therefore, perhaps, still does have plenty of freshness in those legs. He knows himself so well. And what I like about Kipchoge in particular is that his career ticks all the boxes. He's been great on the country. He's a former world junior cross-country champion. He was a world champion at 5,000 meters on the track back in Paris in 2003 when he was 18 years old. He defeated the great Kenenisa Bekele and Haile Gebrselassie to sprint to gold over 12.5 laps in the Stade de France. So he's really gone through the gears of a career where he's touched every distance. He's a 350 miler. He's run 3:33 for 1,500 meters, Eliud Kipchoge there in the white vest. He is a supreme performer from the middle distances through half marathon, where he's run close to 59 minutes. And he's asking there his pacemakers to get across the road. Come on, pack together, guys. Now, I wonder if that's because there's a very slight headwind he's feeling there, Chris.
There is Kipsang, Wilson Kipsang chasing group. And don't be fooled by the foreshortening there. That's quite a gap still.
Which was all expected. This was more or less choreographed, this first half of the race. Becomes harder to stick to a game plan once you're into the third quarter of the race. You can see the pacemakers, they're checking their watches carefully as they head towards 14 kilometers. Eliud Kipchoge has got to remain comfortable, though, through to halfway and beyond, or else he'll be in real trouble.
Well, that's where we are on the course map. We're heading south, down towards the most southerly, southeastern corner of the course, down at Heinrich-Heine-Straße.
And that world record virtual group I was talking about 54, 55 meters behind Eliud Kipchoge and his three pacemakers. So he's staying tantalizingly close. You almost wish they could superimpose a ghost group moving at world record tempo behind Kipchoge. But that's what that graphic does for us. Wonderful stuff there with those graphics. 14 kilometers they go through in around 40, 45.
And we have to keep reminding ourselves of that blistering 30 to 35 kilometer stretch that Kimetto put in that took him to the world record. And Eliud Kipchoge, although he's got the cushion that Tim has been talking about, we need to just put it into context that there was a real surge in pace in 2014 by Dennis Kimetto that Kipchoge will be well aware of.
Well, that split at 14 kilometers, unofficially 40-45, and you can see him there instructing the pacemakers what to do, and he's lost one of his pacemakers. Boit and Kipchoge are there, and it's Kitwara who appears to have dropped out. Now, is he there, or is he out of shot, or is he actually gone? Because that is very significant. He is the man who is regarded as the more personal pacemaker for Eliud Kipchoge. Sami Kitwara, who trains in the Ngong Hills outside Nairobi, not with Eliud Kipchoge at his training camp in Kaptigat, some 350 kilometers northwest of Nairobi. Kitwara seems to have gone. Now, I wonder if that would be of concern to Eliud Kipchoge. I really expected him, Chris, to be the man to take him through halfway, through 25, and perhaps out to 30k.
Very much so. Very much the lead pacemaker of that trio. And we are now down to Joseph Boit and Bernard Kipchoge there. And Kipchoge orchestrating, organising the pacemakers. And I wonder if he's just drawing on the experience of Monza that we referred to, where he had multiple pacemakers in an arrow formation. Of course, that was a very different experiment, more of a lab test, as it was called. Now we're down to two pacemakers, and Kipchoge very much showing that he's in charge here.
And Kipchoge there, getting his bottle at just before 15 kilometers. That 14k split, by the way, unofficially 40-45, puts him on schedule for 2:02.43. So what, some 14 seconds ahead of world record schedule. So that virtual world record group is back by some 60 or 70 meters behind Kipchoge. There's Wilson Kipsang grabbing his drink too at about 14.8 kilometers. Looks untroubled, looks lovely and relaxed, doesn't he? He's a beautiful mover, although his career really contrasts with Kipchoge. He doesn't have the cross-country and track background. He is an out-and-out road racer. He's done virtually no track racing in his career. He started late, didn't come into the world of running until the age of 20, whereas Eliud Kipchoge was lifting world titles on the track at 18. 15 kilometers there, 43.34. 38 actually, unofficially, 43.38. So that's a 2:53, that 15th kilometer. Yeah, and Wilson Kipsang goes through in 43.55. So he's what now? Some 17 seconds down. 22 seconds down, according to that caption. Goodness me, that gap has grown markedly.
But still both inside Dennis Kimeto's world record pace at this stage of the race.
The challenge is thrown down, though, isn't it? That's the average tempo for Eliud Kipchoge is ahead of Kimeto. The virtual Kimeto, the virtual world record tempo. But Kimeto, of course, would have been behind by some distance at this point because of his quicker second half. Kimeto, let's not forget, running halves 4 years ago of 61.45 and then an astonishing 61.12 second half. Huge negative split, and in particular covering that 5 kilometers from 30 to 35k. That's where he did the real damage in 14:10. Indeed, Kimeto covered the 10k from 25 to 35k in 28:40. So there is some very aggressive running coming from the virtual world record group of Dennis Kimeto that is at the moment about 60 meters behind Eliud Kipchoge.
Wonderful atmosphere out on the course. Live bands, of course, pretty much on every street corner, adding to the atmosphere. Now, Boit there. Now, have we lost a second pacemaker, or was again...
Yes, we have. I think I saw him in the background.
Yeah.
They're just disappearing behind that.
So Kitwara went after about 14 kilometers. Now we've left Kip Kemoy as well. So it's just down to Boit. And again, you have to ask, Tim, was that planned, or is that something, again, that was not foreseen? Kipchoge started with 3 pacemakers. And barely 15 kilometers into the race, and he's down to 1. A lot of responsibility now on the shoulders of Josvat Boit.
You can say that again. Goodness me. This, I don't think, has gone to plan. I mean, we haven't reached... We're at about 10 miles of the 26, if you prefer to deal with miles. Obviously, 16 kilometers of the 42. We're at about not much past a third distance, and we're down to 1 pacemaker. There it is, a 2:50 for that 16th kilometer, mind you. Very, very quick indeed. That is the second quickest kilometer of the race after the opener.
And I wonder what Wilson Kipsang is feeling, because he will be, well, question, is he aware that 2 of the pacemakers accompanying Eliud Kipchoge have dropped out? He's, what, about 50, 60 meters back. That may well give him great heart, Wilson Kipsang, because he, as far as we know, has still got his full complement of pacemakers around him.
Well, 46.28 equates to around 2:02.30. So Eliud Kipchoge and Josvat Boit, his pacemaker there to the left, maintaining that gap ahead of the virtual world record pace.
Well, here the lead women group, and Tirunesh Dababa continuing to look very, very comfortable indeed here. Last we saw inside course record pace. That course record held by Mizuki Noguchi from 2005, 2:19.12. And Tirunesh Dababa, there we are, was still 12 seconds inside. There was the average kilometer splits. We've got the actuals as well for Noguchi from 2005 to compare. But a much more controlled performance from Tirunesh Dababa in Berlin compared to London. Just steadying herself to get her drink, gets it safely. That's a skill, of course, that has to be practiced, and not everybody gets it right. Just ask Mo Farah about that from those of you who are watching in London early this year. Made a real meal of getting his drinks, and that cost him valuable time. But Tirunesh Dibaba dealing with that very nicely indeed, and approaching 15 kilometres, but very much more controlled, and she's looking very comfortable indeed, isn't she, Tirunesh Dibaba, here in Berlin.
And you can see Gladys Chorono in the background, and Rutiaga, what about 5 or 6 meters behind Tirunesh Dibaba. They'll be keeping an eye on her, although there's a large group of male runners who, in effect, are keying off Dibaba, knowing that she's aiming for something down there in around the 2:16, 2:18 territory. I don't think that world record of Paula Radcliffe, 2:15.25, is realistic now. She's some way off it, and she'd have to run a superhuman second half to even get close to Radcliffe's second half. Don't forget that Paula Radcliffe, when she ran her world record back in 2003, Chris, 15 years ago now, ran a second half in 67.23. Like Kimetto, very, very big negative split.
Dibaba then through 15 kilometres in 49.08. So that is 14 seconds inside course record pace on the actual of 49.22. So, summary so far. Kipchoge left of picture. There he is, inside world record pace. And in the women, Tirunesh Dibaba inside course record pace.
Eliud Kipchoge looking very calm and relaxed, isn't he? Doesn't appear to be sweating up. There's no glistening on that brow to right of picture. He's got to try and maintain a calmness, hasn't he? Because he knows he's got the much harder part of the journey yet to come. He's been here before, though. He's been in this territory before. That is one hugely reinforcing factor. Well, there have been many different events through the weekend. And, of course, the Berlin Marathon organisers tick all the boxes and involve the youngsters as well. And yesterday at the former Berlin airport, Tempelhof, the Bambini youngsters got underway. 4 age groups, 0 to 4 years, 5 to 6 years, 7 to 8 years, and 9 to 10 years. The tiny youngsters doing 500 metres, the slightly older kids doing 1 kilometre, 1,000 metres around the old airfield every year at the Berlin Vital Fair at Tempelhof. The satisfaction of a job well done and a medal for each and every one of the youngsters makes it very special indeed for them. And then the mini marathon, well, it was the 30th anniversary this year. That again was yesterday afternoon. 30,000 kids taking part. School kids running the last 4.2195 kilometres of the Berlin Marathon, 1/10 of a marathon. There were teams of 10 kids running, so they were running, in effect, a real marathon together and trying to compare their times with the elite athletes performing today. 10 times 44.2195 kilometres. And again, a medal for each and every one of those kids. Fabulous stuff.
So the men approaching 18 kilometres, just approaching an hour's running here. So we're getting pretty close to halfway here on the streets of Berlin. And Eliud Kipchoge inside world record pace at the moment. But again, we keep adding the caveat that the world record was really broken by Dennis Kimetto in those latter stages between 30 and 35 kilometres. Kipchoge needs to find something very special indeed in the second half of this race if he's to maintain world record pace.
Well, here is the chasing group. And Wilson Kipsang has some company. They go through 18 kilometres with a 2:53 split. And that official time for 18 kilometres, just outside 52 minutes. But it's good that Josvat Boit is maintaining that tempo. He's very experienced. He's 34 years old, is Josvat Boit. He's a world-class track runner. He's run 13:17 for 5,000, 27:40 for 10,000 on the track. He too has paid his dues, so to speak. He's a 61.5-minute half marathon runner, so I don't know how much longer he'll be able to maintain this assistance. As we can see there, the splits, and at 18 kilometres, 52:13. World record tempo 52.26. So 13 seconds, the cushion built up by Eliud Kipchoge there in the white and Josfat Boit ahead of the virtual average tempo for the world record of Kimetto. 13 seconds the margin. Now it'd be nice to keep that in double figures. Will that green number to the bottom right there gradually creep down into single figures? Will Kimetto close up on this pairing?
That's the big question, but what a responsibility, Tim, on the shoulders of Josfat Boit, the sole pacemaker now. We're still waiting for information as to what happened to Sami Khedwara and Bernard Kipchoge. I think we can say with confidence it wasn't in the plan for them to disappear from the race so early, that's for sure.
Well, Josfat Boit doing a sterling job, the only survivor. He's a 47.50 man at 10 miles. As I said, he's hasn't broken 61.30 for the half marathon, and yet he's moving at something significantly quicker than that at the moment. Kipchoge, of course, the reigning London Marathon champion, that 2:04.17 coming in sweltering weather for marathon runners in London last April. The Olympic gold in Rio de Janeiro just over 2 years ago now was fairly predictable, frankly, because such is his domination of the world marathon running scene that nobody could see him getting beaten here today. You never know what's coming at you from around the corner, but nobody could see him getting beaten here today. And so much of the talk, with all due respect to the likes of Wilson Kipsang and Eliud Kiptanui and Amos Kipruto, some of the other leading lights, has been about Eliud Kipchoge and the world record. And as you mentioned, Chris, he's been in shape to break the world record by many pundits' judgment for 2 or 3 years or longer now. And if today is not the day, then when? That is what many will ask. This is being set up wonderfully. You don't want to count your chickens before they're hatched, but it's all looking very good at the moment, bar that one issue about the absent pacemakers. There should have been 3 of them there at this stage, that's for sure. They're still some way from halfway. So 19 kilometers past just a few seconds ago.
And the mass start back in the Tiergarten. Runners still waiting to get underway. It really is a festival of running, from the very best in the world left of picture to, well, the amateurs, the fun runners, but they're all running the same distance, and that's what makes these big city marathons so special. All these people running the same course, they can say they followed in the footsteps of the very best in the world, and we may even see a world record. I was running on the day of the world record. That's the view from down under.
Do not adjust your sets, although it does make you feel a bit giddy, doesn't it? And this tempo being maintained by Eliud Kipchoge would make me giddy after 19 kilometers now. Well, I can tell you that 20 kilometers was met by Kimetto and his world record in 58.35. So Kipchoge is going to be well inside that, but by how much? 58.35, bottom right of your screen. 2 minutes away now, and Kipchoge at 19.5 kilometers. Saw him a minute or two ago just licking his lips, just still looking very calm. Beautiful move, very powerful. He's got wonderfully proportioned musculature, up on his toes, bouncing along. Some critics might say he almost bounces too much. The center of gravity, of course, around your navel, your tummy button, right in the lower center of your torso. Should hardly move up and down at all, ideally. Kipchoge there, being handed a bottle by a cyclist who celebrates the achievement. It is not as easy as it looks. It's something they practice in training, these elite athletes, grabbing that bottle at speed. And let's forget, he's moving at, what, something like 12 miles an hour. Almost 13 miles an hour. Kipchoge drinking wisely. Plenty of liquids into him before halfway. If you start to feel thirsty, you've left it too late. That's the old adage. Keep drinking, little and often.
Yeah, small sips.
20 kilometers, 57.56. for Eliud Kipchoge. And that compares against 58.35, so he's watched some 39 seconds inside Kimeto's tempo. Now, that is not an average tempo for Kimeto. That is the actual split for Kimeto during his world record 4 years ago, 58.35. And Kipchoge has just gone 57.56, so 39 seconds inside Kimeto's mark. That is a big, big cushion.
But Kimeto will claw some back, as we keep reiterating in the latter stages. That 30 to 35 kilometre split from Kimeto is where the damage was done. But is that cushion big enough? That's the question.
58.45 unofficially for Wilson Kipsang there. And yes, 55 seconds down. And that is more, actually, than was expected. When you think that Wilson Kipsang was wanting to be half a minute down at the half marathon point, which of course is now just a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes away, that gap has grown substantially. Now, I don't think it's because Eliud Kipchoge has faltered from the pace he wanted. I suspect Kipsang is dropping back a little bit. 20k 57.56, the world record average tempo 58.16. That, of course, has to accommodate the fact that Kimeto poured on the pace in the final quarter of the race. So he's 20 seconds now. And look at that gap growing in the green there, those figures. He's 20 seconds ahead of average speed for the world record, Chris. It's looking promising.
20 seconds of average speed, but as we've just said, 39 seconds ahead of the actual of Kimeto from 4 years ago at 20 kilometres. It's mouth-watering, isn't it? It really is shaping up to be a really thrilling finale as we enter the second half of this race. An hour on the clock.
Well, that 39 seconds represents about 200 metres, almost exactly 200 metres. There's a big gap. If you could see, imagine a Kimeto group 200 metres behind. They'd be way back there in the distance.
Half a lap of the track.
Half a lap of the track, exactly right. And what a good job Josvat Boit is doing. All credit to him. He checks his watch there. He's looking in control. 21.1 kilometres, that's the halfway point. It's only a few hundred metres, couple of hundred metres ahead. And we were looking for 61 minutes exactly. See the clock, bottom right of the screen, 61 minutes exactly at the halfway point. Will be very, very close to what they hit here. And I thought it was unnecessarily fast. I really did. I thought when I heard that mark yesterday, why would you want to go out with 61 minutes exactly, which would bring him home, obviously, if he maintained it, almost a minute inside world record tempo. If you want to break the world record, 61.20 would have been fine. Now, that may not sound like much as they go through the half marathon there, and 61.06 unofficially, yeah, 61.06
wow.
Officially. Brilliant pace making by